What's up, everybody, and welcome into Awesemo's NBA strategy show bright and early here on a Thursday with Engleman. I'm Kaufman, the common denominator. Man, two men here together to talk a little NBA, and we are excited. It's great to be with you, obviously. We got a lot to review. How are you, buddy?
I appreciate you thinking that I'm a full man. That's fantastic.
Full man. Yeah. Or at least together, half man, and together one full man. Either way. And if there is one, common link between the two of us beyond that is our ability, our willingness, our downright desire, our burning lust to shill for likes. So everybody smash that like button. We appreciate you. We'll be here with you for the next little while going over all things tonight NBA, and obviously it's a smaller slate to get into. I want to start though, Josh, with what went down last night. Just very quickly reviewing some of the top plays because we had some breakout performers. Now, I knew, and here's something that's not a hot take for you. Knew Bradley Beal was in a good position for a good game. He is most nights. But holy crap, 80 points on DraftKings, about 75 on FanDuel. The man absolutely blew up, broke the slate if you had him. What'd you think?
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. I actually didn't play last night. Had some dinner plans with the wife, but I started seeing Twitter go crazy about Beal. So from mid third quarter-ish until the end of the game, I was fixated on Beal. And then the fourth quarter was a bit anticlimactic, unfortunately. But still, 75 fantasy points on FanDuel, 80 on DraftKings. Crazy day. And he did it in 38 minutes, too. It's not as if he played like 44 or something in classic Beal fashion or OT. He was just hanging it on them. It's fun to see.
Yeah, absolutely blew up. He wasn't the only one. Joel Embiid went for north of 65 on both sites. Gordon Hayward, a career game. He had 60 fantasy points. He had, 44 real-life points, career high for him, obviously. He was terrific. Julius Randle continues to do what he's doing. I don't know how you ever fade this guy. He seems to be a threat, not only for an automatic double-double, but a threat for a triple-double every single game. It's just weird, maybe because he's really the only offense of any consistency for the Knicks, but the guy just keeps on blowing up. You also had Russell Westbrook, Malcolm Brogdon, Jaylen Brown, Kobe White, all with a really solid high return value kinds of nights based on their price, obviously. Who stood out to you beyond Beal?
So I'm really aggravated that I didn't play yesterday. I've been jamming Shea into my lineups on a daily basis, and everything was lining up that was going to happen again yesterday. He had been pedestrian-ish so far this season. Not so much yesterday. 53.5 FanDuel points. That would have been very nice to have. Although I don't get the sense that I would have had a ton of Beal, so I probably would have been playing from behind either way.
Our guy El Negro Logo says, am I the only one who thinks Adam kind of looks like the Punisher? In the chat, I can't remember his name. We talking about the dude from Daredevil / the actual Punisher, the Netflix series.
Ben Affleck?
No, yeah, right. I'll take it. Handsome guy, and he looks like he can kick a little ass, so I'll take it. Everybody be here with us. We appreciate you. Hit that like button, already off to a decent start. Hit the subscribe button, obviously, on the Awesemo YouTube page, as we are making the push for about 50,000 subscribers. You've heard Laffy and company talk a lot about it, sitting at 47.3 as we stand right now, so should easily be able to get to 50K by the NBA season's end, which is still quite a ways away. And you must be enjoying basketball so far, right? Other than last night's, mandated night off.
Yeah, I love it. It's my favorite sport. It's my favorite sport to cover. It's my favorite sport to watch outside of when Liverpool is playing. The NBA season is the best time for me, especially when there's nothing else going on. So once the NFL is finally done, and it, basically is, but we still have the weekends.
Sure.
My schedule just becomes set, for basically all of January, February, and March. I know what I'm doing every single day, and I can get into some sort of routine. That doesn't happen as much during the NFL crossovers or the baseball crossovers. But for right now, this is heaven to me.
Although my wife doesn't love it as much because, right around dinner time, basically every day, she said, are this is what's happening every day? We're just setting lineups now for the next half hour. Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's exactly how it works in this house too. Hey, what are you making for dinner, and are you available to eat before 6 p.m.?
Yeah, pretty much.
Otherwise, it's after 7.
Man, let's jump into it. Before we go game by game, just on the surface, some of the top projected scores based on obviously our own Alex Baker's projections on the Awesemo website. I encourage you, check it out. It's a very handy resource to look at, how guys are priced and what kind of return of value they're expected to have, not to mention just obviously projected point totals in general. And to no surprise, you have Nick Jokic, Luka Doncic right at the top, LeBron James as well, all at 50 plus on DraftKings. FanDuel, basically the same thing. And I don't know. I look at it, I guess, on the surface in a couple of different ways. Jokic is a guy who, more often than not, he's going to do it. He's going to get the job done. He's consistent. It's just, as you know, you got to pay way the hell up to do it. And so are you surrounding the rest of your lineup with kind of lower to mid-tier guys and values? Is it worth it? Luka Doncic, he's been, kind of a not total boomer bust, although he's certainly had games like that early in the season, but I wouldn't necessarily classify him as reliable as the Joker has been so far. And then LeBron James is just sort of the Anthony Davis factor and which guy is going to go off in a given night. So how do you like these three in particular?
Oh man, they look super duper similar. It's really hard to separate them. I actually like the next tier down a little bit more, the mid to high nines. I guess. So the problem here is that we don't know who's really playing for the Lakers tonight. They're on a back-to-back. So on the surface, I think that I like LeBron the most of those three, but he does carry the Q tag. And today I think it's actually a legitimate Q tag. AD also has it. So it wouldn't surprise me if one of these guys sits. It wouldn't surprise me if both of these guys sit. I have them both in for right now. So give me, if I'm ranking them, I'd go LeBron, Jokic, Luka, but there is very little separating each one of those guys. They look ultra similar. And I'm speaking from a DraftKings perspective right now.
Yeah, and obviously we know that it's going to be several hours before we get a lot of the details, and lineup building. It really starts a good hour before the tip off, and even a half hour before tip off of the first games. Then you start to worry about late swaps and things like that, where it's available to you. El Negro Loco, as we know, is always on top of everything. You want to be in the Awesemo Premium Slack channel. Look at all the NBA breaking news because he's getting this stuff before basically anybody else. And obviously, eyes should be glued to all of that. Let's go to the first one here. Philadelphia at Brooklyn. As we know, the Sixers, arguably the best team in the Eastern Conference, off to a 7-1 start. They've won their last four. Brooklyn is mediocre, quite frankly. I mean, I know the talent's there, and obviously dealt a blow with Kevin Durant being out due to COVID concerns and exposure for a little while, looking like a 4-game absence. But with him out, Kyrie Irving has done really well. No surprise there, sort of a one-man show. Tonight, you won't have Durant. You won't have Spencer Dinwiddie. He's out for the rest of the season with the ACL. Mike Scott is out on the Sixers side. Top plays based on projections: Joel Embiid, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons. Let's start there. Who do you like best?
Man, I like a lot of this game, actually. I think Embiid looks a bit underpriced, 9,900 on FanDuel, 9,500 on DraftKings. Ownership is already there. He's about 20% on both sites, and I think that's perfectly warranted. This is a nice spot against Brooklyn. It's not like Jared Allen is physically capable of handling Joel Embiid. We'll see how that goes. It's possible we see a little bit more DeAndre Jordan just from a defensive matchup standpoint. I don't know what they're going to do there, so pay close attention to the starters. Allen moved into the starting lineup in that last game. Wouldn't surprise. He had such a great game that I expected to continue just because he went bonkers. But in the grand scheme of things, DeAndre Jordan matches up better against Joel Embiid. So we'll see what they do there. I also really like Ben Simmons. Simmons came up more in my sims than anybody else on Philly. 8,700 on FanDuel is just too cheap to me. I'm happy with the projection. Alex actually has him a little bit higher than I do. Again, the ownership is already there. He's projected for 29% ownership on FanDuel. Happy to get him on DraftKings too, but he's not as owned. There's some guys that are picking up ownership on Philly though that I'm a little surprised by. Look, I like Danny Green. He's 3,700 today, and he's already got 17% ownership. Don't get the sense that I'm going to have that much Danny Green today.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of the guys that I was going to dive into here because, I don't know, maybe I put personally too much credence in it, but I love looking at what Alex does in terms of the projection per $1,000 and the points, obviously, and what kind of value the 5X and beyond. And more often than not, you're talking 5 plus. It takes a lot of opportunity for, a DeMarcus Cousins kind of night last night. If you just started thinking about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10X even value, where obviously you're totally stealing a guy off the rest of the slate. But top play tonight, based on all of that, you're talking about paying down for the likes of Bruce Brown at $3,500 on DraftKings, getting about 5.7, X value. DeAndre Jordan, who you mentioned, is very similar at 4,200. Obviously, you want to start to pay up, concern yourself with the likes of Tobias Harris. Really, there are a lot of good opportunities, good plays after those top tier studs of Embiid and Irving.
Yeah, like Curry, Tobias Harris on FanDuel or DraftKings, I think are both guys that should be getting about 15% ownership, and it looks like they are. On the Brooklyn side, people are going to go to Karis LeVert, which seems reasonable, I guess. I don't know what they're doing with him. He just seems to be like a backup, even on a team without starters. I don't understand what they're doing there, but $3,500 Bruce Brown on DraftKings, that's a spot that I would much rather be. I mean, we've got him at 18% ownership. We've got Danny Green at 17. I guess that they're comparable in their normal rates. They're about 0.75 to 0.8 fantasy point per minute guys. I just think there's a lot more upside in Bruce Brown than there is in Danny Green.
I'll probably ask you this a lot as it concerns all these games that we're going to do here today, but is there someone else from this game that, we haven't fixated on? Someone that maybe is a little bit sneaky, whether it's in regard to ownership for GPPs, or you just, like the guy to go out and perform return value?
Well, we haven't mentioned Kyrie, or at least I haven't mentioned Kyrie. Someone that I've been regularly light on that has not gone well for me so far this season. I kind of feel the same way now. He's 32% owned on FanDuel. To me, that feels a little high. I've been higher on Damian Lillard, and that hasn't gotten me anywhere yet. I'm hoping that it does tonight. On DraftKings, the 21% ownership on Kyrie looks a little bit better. But if we're talking just guys that I want to take a shot on that seem to have lower ownership, Bruce Brown for 3,900 on FanDuel, not picking up a lot of love. After that, I don't really. Okay, I got one. So Jared Allen on DraftKings is 6,400. We've got him projected for 8.7% ownership. If we get news that Jared Allen is starting tonight, and we should have that news because this is the 7:30 start, I think Jared Allen should be owned significantly more than that, probably twice where the field is currently. He's good. He's just not playing because DeAndre Jordan happens to be friends with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Like he's getting like grandfathered into additional minutes, and he's like DeAndre Jordan is fine. He should just be the backup. There's no future in DeAndre Jordan. Just let him make his money, play his 18 minutes a game, and be there. I've got Jared Allen in for 28 minutes right now. If he's getting 28 minutes, he should be owned significantly more than 8%.
Folks, do us a favor, smash that like button as we are closing in on 100 on the Awesemo YouTube page. We appreciate you being here with us nice and early on a Thursday morning, obviously. And while we've got you, want to remind you, celebrate the new year, 2021 with Awesemo Plus. Get 21 days of Awesemo Plus. Only $20 for that. Use the promo code 2021 at checkout. Easy enough to remember, obviously. It gives you access to everything Awesemo Plus has to offer, including player projections, ownership projections, all the stuff we're talking about, and so much more than that. Not just NBA, across all sports. Hell, you got a golf tournament starting today. You can get all that same information. It's available to you. And of course, there's lineup builder, so much more. And there's even more than that. If you love Awesemo, and I know you do, it's why you're here, you're looking to commit longer term, maybe you can get 20% off on Awesemo Plus yearly platinum pass with promo code HAPPY. Why? Because it makes you happy to do that, obviously. It's our only discount on a yearly pass all year, so do not miss it. Make sure you do so. And we're going to keep on rolling through the 5-game slate that we've got tonight, all on that main slate because it begins 7:30 Eastern time. But the next game here, half hour later, it's Cleveland at Memphis. Cavs surprising at 4-4. Memphis has lost 4 straight at home, if that factors into anything that you're thinking about. As we know, John Morant and Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr., they are out. Kevin Love, Dante Exum, Kevin Porter Jr. are on the other side. And so top plays, a guy we spend a lot of time talking about, actually 2 guys that we talk a lot about here. It's, Andre Drummond and Colin Sexton. Is it a good night for the 2 of them?
It's a good night for at least one of them. I prefer Andre Drummond. He was pretty highly ranked in my contenders videos today. Go check those out, by the way.
Please do.
We've got Drummond, Nance, Sexton, and Chetty all north of, basically like 25% owned on FanDuel. Nance and Chetty not picking up as much love on DraftKings. It's Isaac Okoro that is actually going, at least to me, a little bit underrepresented, but we can get to that in a little bit. I like getting to Drummond for sure. 9,200 on FanDuel and a completely preposterous 8,400 on DK. He's been smashing so far this season. I think I have him projected for something like 18 points and 14 rebounds, some sort of really crazy baseline. He's very chalky on DraftKings. Is he the highest owned player on DK right now?
I have to pull that up.
He is by quite a bit. And I think it's basically completely warranted. He should be that highly owned. 8,400 is just an incorrect price for Andre Drummond. I assume you're locking him in most cash scenarios. Larry Nance is a guy that I would like to get a little bit more of. Not great, not fantastic from a per minute perspective, 0.98, but he doesn't have any usage to speak of. He's like a 12 to 14% usage guy. I think he just fills it out just because he's going to play a ton of minutes. So Nance is a guy on DraftKings that I'm looking at that's going a little bit under owned, but I get the chalk on Cleveland. They're playing big minutes and they don't really have any alternatives. It's not like they're going to try to get Lamar Stevens and Dean Wade any additional time.
Some of the other guys that you could look up in this matchup, just seemingly in a real good smash spot. Obviously Drummond leads the pack. Similarly, though, if you wanted to pay way the hell down, how about JaVale McGee?
So he's 4,700 on FanDuel, 4,200 on DraftKings. I would be more likely to get to him on DK than I would be on FanDuel. But at the same time, I think there's enough out there at center that you don't really need to go there. I mean, clearly don't play Andre Drummond and JaVale in the same lineup on DraftKings. Right. If you don't believe in the Andre Drummond ownership, if you're trying to get away from it, that would be the only reason that I would be getting to JaVale. I just don't see the only way that he's getting on the floor for additional playing time is if Andre Drummond doesn't. So I do like that sort of play on a 5-game slate where if the center is pretty chalky, taking the backup is going to help you twofold. One, they're probably not owned that much. And two, if for your play to succeed, it means that chalk is likely failing. So in that regard, I like it in a large field GPP, but I have JaVale at 16 minutes. And the only way that works out for JaVale is if Andre Drummond plays 28 and McGee can play up a little bit because they're not playing together at all. That's impossible. Well, it's not. I shouldn't say impossible. It is Cleveland. They played Tristan Thompson and Andre Drummond alongside each other last year. So who the hell knows?
So Alex has Dylan Brooks projected for right around 33 points, very similar to the likes of Jonas Valanciunas, Larry Nance Jr., Kyle Anderson. I don't know. Maybe I've just been burned by Brooks more than once, but this is just a guy I feel like I can't trust, even at a very modest 6,300 on DK.
We're in the same boat here. 6K on FanDuel, 6,300 on DraftKings. He's a guy that only scores and does literally nothing else. So if the shot's not falling, you're in trouble. The good news is he'll shoot himself out of a slump, or at least try to. He'll never stop gunning. But I think there are just better options there, especially 17.5% owned on FanDuel seems a bit high to me. 17% owned on DraftKings seems a lot high to me. I'd rather get to Kyle Anderson on the same team. I'd probably rather get to Brandon Clark, at least on DraftKings, where he's $1,000 cheaper. I don't like rostering Dylan Brooks when his price has already come up a bit. I liked it more when the injury first happened and he was a couple $100 cheaper.
If you're going to be looking at value, as obviously you're going to have to across this slate, and there are a couple of different games in particular probably where value stands out, but is this one of them when you start to look at, Gorgie Jang, who's coming off a great effort? He's projected for about 22. DeAnthony Melton is super cheap, $3,300 on DK. He could get you around 20 points as well. Is one of these guys appealing to you?
I don't know what they're doing with Melton right now. I assume it's going to take a little bit for his playing time to jump up. I think he played 16 minutes in his first game back. I gave him a little bit of a bump there. He's not there for me yet, but when he gets back to being 24-minute a game DeAnthony Melton, that will happen one day and he'll be like $300 or $400 too cheap. I just don't think it's today. Gorgeous Dong, kind of just the direct backup to Jonas Valanciunas, so sort of the same boat as JaVale. I guess I would rather go, he's 13% owned on DraftKings, so maybe not. Everything that I said about JaVale McGee is the exact same thing I would say about Gorgie Jang.
Looking at the Awesemo chat that we've got going on here on YouTube, obviously, just kind of going back to the McGee and Drummond stuff. Let's see. Someone said, Rhyme Life Music LLC, Awesemo projections gave me Drummond and McGee in the top lineup in 300 lineups.
That's probably a bit aggressive.
Yeah. Feels a little bit aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, you should not be doing that.
How about from Brian? You can play one or the other on FanDuel. Is McGee a good GPP play?
Uh, to me, no. I think that the ownership is already there. And there's a bit of an opportunity. Let me look at the position and just like really hash this out. Because I don't assume that I would have any. I have run a crunch. He's not in it. So let's just put that out there right now. Okay. Interesting. If I'm going to pay down at power forward on FanDuel today, like I would rather go to Maxi at 4K instead of JaVale. Kuzma's at 4,100. If we see one of those guys sit, that's a no-brainer. Paul Millsap at 4,400. I think there are just other ways to go. I don't really see the need to go to JaVale in a GPP, but I don't think it's crazy as long as you're not putting Andre Drummond in at center. And you can be relatively chalky for the rest of your lineup after that if you're just dodging Andre Drummond. It will be beneficial. If it's the big GPP, the 200,000 plus entry thing, it's way more viable to me. I don't see it in smaller field stuff.
TMCB74 says, jealous of those fancy shelves, Kaufman. At some point, I'm going to need a DVD count. I'm around 750, 800. They just sit in piles starting on the floor. No, yeah, you got to get those things on display because honestly, if a DVD isn't serving the purpose of just showing off that it exists at this point in time with streaming services, then you're just wasting your time. It may as well be a cassette tape. Serves you no good.
Yeah.
It's for the perfect Zoom background is what it is.
That's very true. I don't think I own a DVD.
There are parts of me that are jealous of that statement only when I think about what was spent behind me.
I don't even think I've ever purchased a DVD.
Not even as a gift for somebody else. How dare you, sir?
No, see, I would have been horrible to most people. I would have ordered it on Netflix, had them mail it to me, burn that bad boy, and ship that one right back out.
Does Netflix still offer that service? Can you still get DVDs in the mail?
I have no idea. I truly don't. Probably.
I don't either. I mean, maybe somebody out there must not subscribe to having everything available at your fingertips on a remote control and still wants a disc in the mail, right? I don't know. Cantor says, LOL, I like this dude. Gonna start calling him Nice Adam. Is the other Adam not so nice?
You could say that.
That's a kind way to put it.
He's a little surly.
Salty? Well, maybe you're just catching me in a good mood first thing in the morning. Who knows? Keep hitting us with your comments, obviously, on YouTube and the Awesemo Premium Slack channel. Tanner says Kaufman looks and sounds like Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. I've heard that before. I got to look up who this guy is. I don't know.
You don't know who Mike Rowe is? He's like the voice of everything.
Then I would like to be the voice of everything. So that sounds pretty good to me.
He's like white Morgan Freeman, just constantly getting him for like voiceovers and stuff.
So he's God, basically.
Sort of, yeah.
But we know Morgan Freeman was God, so this is the other God.
True. It's either like Chevy or Ford, one of those truck commercials. He's the voice of that. He's the voice of all sorts of nonsense. It's a good voice.
I'm in. Sign me up. All right, Dallas at Denver. Nuggets. Michael Porter Jr. is out. Kristaps Porzingis is out for the Mavs. Top plays. We talked about the two of them earlier. Let's do it again. Nick Jokic and Luka Doncic. How do you feel just when it comes to these studs or maybe in general when it comes to, and I know you talked about LeBron feeling more comfortable with him over these two, but the idea on this slate in general, just to rehash some of what you talked about off the top of the show of paying up to that degree if you're going to pay north of 10K for a guy.
Yeah, so on FanDuel, relative to the field, I think that they're equals. I think that Luka is probably just a better play in a vacuum if you're spending up, but I see them pretty comparably to the field, so I don't have a lean either way. If Locke were in 5 minutes, I would probably have relatively equal amounts of both, adjusted for position. It's harder to have equal amounts of Jokic to Doncic because Doncic, there's only one center. If there were two centers, it would actually be equal. On DraftKings, where Luka's 10-5 and Jokic is 10-9, and you get a little bit more flexibility, I would lean a little bit more towards Jokic, especially because Doncic is the one that's picking up a little bit more ownership. I think it's easier to go to Jokic in a larger field GPP than it is Luka. But again, I think both of them look fine. I'm a little nervous about the ownership that Luka is getting just relative to the other pay up options. Either way, on a 5-gamer, you don't have a choice. You should be paying attention to both of them. Neither one of them looks bad. And if you're in a contest and you get to either one of them, you should be pretty happy about it.
If you're playing a cash game as opposed to a GPP, though, are you more inclined to want to play one of these guys?
Oh boy, that is a fantastic question.
Hey, thanks. That's what I'm here for.
On FanDuel, let's see. I would be more likely to have
The suspense.
I would be more likely to have Luka on FanDuel because I think Andre Drummond is just so much more cost effective for one center spot that it's easier to just pay up at a different position. On DraftKings, I haven't run a crunch yet, but just looking through it, like positionally, it might be a problem again, just because it's going to be easier to get to Luka in cash games in both scenarios because of the way center is set up today. Joel Embiid exists. Andre Drummond is 8,400 on DK. So you know that's going to be one of your center spots. So I think Luka is the more likely cash option. Had to work through it a little bit.
That's all right. Hey, that's what we're here for. Is this a game, just kind of looking at Alex's projections here, where if you're not playing Jokic, you're not playing Luka, maybe you're looking to pay way down 3,300 on DK for someone like Jalen Brunson, who's projected for around 17, 18 points. But is this kind of a game where you're sort of ignoring everybody else? I mean, no disrespect intended to, Jamal Murray or even to some degree, Tim Hardaway Jr., I guess, but it just doesn't seem like there are a lot of great plays in this game.
Yeah, I actually would like to get to Jamal Murray. 7,600 on FanDuel, 7,600 on DraftKings. We should have Porter back tonight, but Jamal Murray is 4% owned on DK right now. I think that I have a relatively pessimistic projection on him, and he's grading out significantly better than that. Alex actually has him like 3 fantasy points ahead of me, so I can't imagine how much Alex actually likes Jamal Murray. I assume it's a lot. He's got a ceiling, and I feel like this is the sort of spot where you saw it happen in the bubble in the playoffs when he and Donovan Mitchell started going back and forth. I get that same sort of vibe with Luka. And now I know Jokic has taken a little bit more of the playmaking ability, so it's been a little different, but we've also seen Jamal Murray pick up a third rotation in the first half. So he's coming off a little earlier, coming back with the second unit at the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, and then closing out that second quarter. I think he has an opportunity to really pick up some usage in that additional run. But either way, he's just a guy that has a bigger ceiling and a bigger... There aren't a lot of guys like this that you can roster on a 5-game slate that are 4% owned. And Jamal Murray has that. He has like legit 40 plus regular point upside if he's playing. And to get that at 4% sounds fantastic to me. I also want to point out Willie Cauley-Stein, if he starts again, should be way more owned than 3.5% on DraftKings, where he's 3,700. There's a lot of value at center tonight, but that's a spot where if you think he's starting again, you have to take a look at him.
Question is, how long can you wait to find out, obviously?
Yeah, that's the tricky part. The good news is there's probably going to be a lot of value that could potentially open up for the Lakers, and you can probably move some pieces around. Not something that I've dug into yet. Do you think Dallas goes back to their previous starting lineup? Do you think Powell is back in the starting lineup now? I don't know what they're going to do here.
Yeah, I really don't know. I feel like just, between injuries, uncertainties, obviously inconsistency in that lineup. They've been mixing and matching a lot. And I just don't feel good about them reliably doing anything.
Yeah, like Willie Cauley-Stein got 24 minutes the last time out. Even if you think that is just like a little outlandish, if you give him, say, 22, and, they don't have to close with Willie Cauley-Stein. That could just as easily be Maxey at the 5. They can go a bunch of different directions. 22 minutes of Willie Cauley-Stein at 3,700. He's a slightly north of 1 fantasy point per minute guy. I assume they would rather have Willie Cauley-Stein on Jokic than Dwight Powell. Dwight Powell is not going to match up well there at all. He's a defensive nightmare. So my expectation is that Willie Cauley-Stein continues the role that he saw, 3 days ago, remains in the starting lineup and becomes a value option. Not as good of a value option on FanDuel as he is on DK just because of the opportunity cost of center, but it's a guy that's just not getting ownership again that I think should be.
So Ryan says leverage to try and cram both Luka and Joker in a lineup. What do you think?
Depends on the site for sure. Shouldn't be a problem to get. I think it's going to be pretty easy to get 2 of the pay up options. That one's going to really make you take a haircut in other spots. Yeah. But to me, it's doable. Like,
Yeah,
let's see.
How many 4K guys do you want, basically?
I'm going to lock them both in on FanDuel right now, just because that's what I have up in front of me to see how, like, what the best lineup is that I can create for those two guys. If they meant DraftKings, well, I can't help you then. I mean, I can, but it's not going to be as fast.
Your internet has multiple browsers, does it not?
It does, but I already have everything uploaded for FanDuel where I don't
paid up, got
okay.
the fancy stuff.
I did. All right, so my optimal, if I have Luka and Jokic locked, oh man, it gets even more stars and scrubsy. So Dame also joining that lineup. Malik Beasley, Schroeder, Chetty, Derek Jones Jr., Juancho Hernan-Gomez, Kyle Kuzma. Yeah, sign me up. I like that lineup a lot, and you still get to Dame.
People are really banking on Juancho stepping out again, huh?
I think you have to. He's still only 4,200. If he's starting, and he started the past 2 games, it took 10 shots the first time out, 14 the previous game, got 8 threes up. You know, it was a little bit of a heater, but you didn't need all 46.6 fantasy points on FanDuel. The 2 steals and a block, you know, it's worth a shot. He's worth the value. It's Minnesota. They're terrible.
Now I want to know what that lineup sounds like on DK when you have time. You don't need to do it.
We'll load it up.
We got us right now. Yeah, I'm curious.
I've got it here. Give me 1 second. See, well, when you're good, you're good. I can get there quickly.
All right, you get there. I'm going to read this for the people. If you're not able to watch your favorite Awesemo shows on YouTube, and how dare you? Shame on you if you're not. It's okay. Almost all our Awesemo YouTube shows are available through the Awesemo Podcast Network, including maybe even this one. We've got a podcast for every sport. We're available on every major platform. Head on over to awesemo.com/podcast to check out the absolute latest. And once you are there, drop a 5-star rating and a review with your Twitter handle or Awesemo username included. You could win a free week of Awesemo Plus. Why wouldn't you want that? We will be giving away a free Awesemo Plus pass every single week to the person who submits our favorite review. So best of luck to you, obviously. And, leave those reviews. We want to hear from you. And also hit that like button, would you, folks? We're closing in on 150. We got about 700 people watching. It's a nice, respectable number early on a Thursday. Can we get to 200 as we are a little more than midway through this show? So what do you have?
All righty. So this one is way uglier than the FanDuel version. It's Luka at point guard, Bruce Brown, Derek Jones Jr., Maxey, Andre Drummond, Jarrett Culver, and Hernan-Gomez. I would probably go to the second one. But that one sucks too. You're really getting no, not so much. It's a lot of ugly. I don't like the Jarrett Culver piece.
Yeah, I don't
amongst other things.
I don't like half that lineup.
yeah. The FanDuel version, I actually legitimately liked
tonight. Yeah, the FanDuel one sounded pretty good. The DK one, no thanks.
I think what this is saying is that if you're locking in Luka and Jokic on DraftKings, you're going to have a hell of a time filling out the rest of the lineup.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's go to the next game. We got a couple left to review still, and we're here with you for another 20 minutes or so. If you have any questions, get them on in for the YouTube chat or Awesemo Premium Slack channel as well with Josh. I'm Adam. Thanks for being here with us. Okay, so we got San Antonio at LA. That's the Lakers. 6-2, by the way. They've won their last 4. Again, as we sit here right now, is LeBron going to play? Is he not going to play? We just don't know. Anthony Davis, it seems like night to night, both these guys are kind of question marks from a rest perspective, not injury, but just rest. Third matchup this season already for these two teams, by the way. So you got a pretty good sample size in there as well if you want to look toward any historical patterns, if you're built that way. For the Lakers, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Alex Caruso, they're not playing. LaMarcus Aldridge is day-to-day for the Spurs, so we'll wait and see on him. Top plays, you've got LeBron, Davis, and then you go down a tier, DeMar DeRozan, DeJounte Murray. Who do you like?
Alex Caruso actually is available for this game. He is back now, perfect. Finally. KCP, though, is out. Look, obviously, all of this can change if one of these two guys are out. If you're asking me who I prefer, I would rather have Anthony Davis on FanDuel. I think he's a better option at lesser ownership than LeBron. On DraftKings, I would rather have LeBron than Anthony Davis. I just think he's a better option. Either way, you should be looking at both of them. I prefer AD on FanDuel. I prefer LeBron on DraftKings. I prefer them both to most things. AD being 9,800 on DraftKings is kind of crazy, but I still think like the LeBron 10K price tag is equally as wild. And Alex likes LeBron even more than I do.
When you say you like them both, would you, if you're trying, we were just talking about, stars and scrubs kinds of lineups, would you fade Joker and Luka and put both these guys, LeBron and Davis, if they're both playing in a lineup?
Let me look at the ownership, because for me, everything comes down to ownership and the relativity against the rest of the public. So if that moves, my answers will change dramatically. If I'm just looking at the top end, I think that Luka is the most over-owned of the expensive guys on DK. So he would be the first guy that would take a haircut for me. AD would probably be the first guy to take a little bit of a bump. I think he is the least owned, and I see them all as relatively comparable. On the FanDuel side, AD to me is wildly under-owned. That would be a spot that I am just aggressively trying to get to, barring him being in. I think Kyrie is the most over-owned at 10K. I have paid for that one over the past couple of games, but I'm willing to pay for it again.
So we got a super chat here from the sports vent. Josh, do you have a rule on ownership per dollar in GPP?
I do not, but I also don't know what you mean. But I know that I don't have it either. So there's that.
Feel free, sports vent here, to further clarify your question. You don't need to pay for it either. You can just throw it on into the YouTube, although we appreciate, obviously, the super chat. From Fresno, who is shouting out the DK Sim fam. You love to see it, obviously, if folks over at DraftKings on the YouTube channel like to watch those Madden Sims. Best center on DK. Who do you like?
It's got to be Andre Drummond because of his price today.
Yeah, Mike
8,400 is just silly.
You're probably going to just echo the same thing again, but Mike's saying, why is Drummond such a lock? He's averaging 26 minutes over his last 4 games.
Because that's not really how he's averaging. Like, you can't just average minutes. You have to know why those things are happening. And if you're projecting an actual game for Cleveland today, you have to be projecting Andre Drummond north of 30 minutes. Do you have Alex's projection in front of you? I could probably get there. I just didn't know if you had it. I just wanted to see where Alex had. Yeah, where does Alex have Drummond from a minutes perspective?
From a minutes perspective, I don't have that. I have points.
I'm gonna get there, so it won't matter. He's got him at 30, which I think is perfectly reasonable and exactly where it should be. That's the floor of his minutes projection. You have to plan this out as if people are going to get their full rotations. If guys lose rotations because of blowouts or foul trouble, you can't just assume that that's going to happen moving forward. That's why I don't like to look at rolling averages of minutes. You have to work through each game rotation to find out what is the coach's intention for playing them in a perfect world. That's the way that you should be starting. That's the way that most projection systems are going to start. And that's why you see Alex have Andre Drummond at 30 minutes, and 30 minutes at 80 whatever 100 is a price tag that you can't turn your back on that on DraftKings.
Ryan says Horton Tucker, a GPP value with KCP out. What do you think?
I don't think so, because Caruso is back now. I have no idea how many minutes Alex Caruso is going to play. It could be 0 because he's on like the wrong side of this. I gave him 16. We'll see where that actually ends up. But even if Caruso, say, doesn't play, or we find out that he isn't going to play, I think he's fine. 3,500 flat minimum on FanDuel, 3,500 on DraftKings. There are worse plays out there, but I'm just assuming that Caruso eats into, there's just a little bit less to go around. You still have Wesley Matthews there that's picking up time. I think Taylor Horton Tucker's the first guy to take a little bit of a haircut here. I don't think that he's particularly viable today unless we get additional news.
Steven said, and I know you would agree with this, you can build a better DK lineup with Luka and Drummond in replacing the Joker.
Yeah, without question. I can't even imagine how much it changes. Like, I got Drummond. Drummond is such a good play that I got Drummond when I locked Jokic. So if I switch that and only lock Luka and Drummond, it starts to open you up to significantly better players. Dame, Beasley, Torian Prince is a problem, but you could swap into quite a few different 3,500 guys. I'd rather just go to Bruce Brown, Derek Jones Jr., Juancho, my boy Willie Cauley-Stein. I really like this Minnesota and Dallas setup today. A lot of blue on my screen.
Now, that'll be the next one we get into, and I agree with you on that. Sports Vent Clarifying says, how much ownership is too much for you to roster as a rule, or does that vary by player and money?
Yeah, everything is independent, or everything is player dependent, and ultimately your entire lineup dependent. There's no problem with having guys that you think should be owned more than they are. There's no level. Like, I can think somebody that's 60% owned is under owned. I can think someone that is 5% owned is over owned. You can, just because guys are at the extremes doesn't mean you can't get to them. And just because someone is heavily owned, you could have a guy that's 70% owned today in a GPP. That doesn't mean you can't use him in GPPs or that it's an automatic fade. You just have to be aware of the ownership in the rest of your lineup. If you're putting together a very chalky lineup, if you're putting together, say, the Awesemo optimal, or if you're putting together a cash lineup that's going to be heavy in ownership, to get that into a more GPP style lineup, you really only need to make one or two moves to bring down the ownership a little bit, and you'll have no problem being unique and not having to worry about duplication. It's a little different on a showdown slate where there's going to be duplication no matter what. But even on a slate like today, I have run a crunch on FanDuel, and I can use FanDuel as a reference point for what I'm saying. If I just look at my GPP lineups, the top ranked lineup that I got just out of the gate, I haven't touched anything else, is a 1 in 2.3 million lineup. That's if you just take the product of if you take all of the products of projected ownership, that's how frequently you would expect all of those guys to be in the same lineup. Now, there are some things that add a little bit of correlation, but it's a pretty solid rule. Even if you just say that, if I take one of the more chalky ones, I got one that's 1 in 800,000. There's 230,000 entries in the largest field GPP. Even if I cut that 800,000 in half, I'm still not all that likely to be duped with just that lineup. So one change can turn that into a lineup that no one else is going to have, and you'll be fine. So you want to worry about it in the whole and worry about each individual guy relative to some other guys in the same tier. It was a long-winded answer of saying that I don't really pay attention to it too much.
We are rapidly approaching 200 likes, folks. Smash that like button. About 800 people here watching with us on YouTube. Appreciate you, each and every one of you. We will shout you out by name if we have to. Let's get to 200 likes before we get out of here in the next 15, 20 minutes. And we've got one more game left to cover as well. It's a good one here. But first, I want to tell you about Odds Shopper. Do not make a bet without shopping for the best odds first, okay? Betting lines, they can change by the minute. They can vary very greatly depending on which book that you are using, and that's why it's important to use Awesemo Odds Shopper to find the best line available on the game that you are betting on and give you that edge that you need to beat the house. Head on over to Odds Shopper, Awesemo.com. It's oddshopper.awesemo.com. We compile the best bets available for every single game, updated in real time too, folks. Sign up free today, track your bets, and receive alerts when lines move. And believe me, lines do move. You find out LeBron is not playing tonight, or Davis is not playing tonight, or heaven forbid, neither one is playing tonight. Yeah, odds move. So you want to be mindful, obviously, of what is going on. And as Nightbot says, subscribe to this channel and hit the like button. Yes, please do. We appreciate it and trust everybody with a wrench. That is the thing. You trust everybody with a wrench in the YouTube chat. Minnesota at Portland. 3 straight losses on the road for the Timberwolves coming in. Karl Anthony Towns is out, the wrist injury. No Zach Collins or Rodney Hood on the other side. Top plays, Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, D'Angelo Russell. How do you feel about these 3?
Love Dame. I don't mind the heavy ownership at all. I'll be there. 9,200 on FanDuel, 9,300 on DraftKings. This guy's going to play 36 or more minutes. And at some point in time, he's going to go crazy, and these threes are going to start dropping. Robert Covington picking up a ton of ownership on FanDuel. I think that's warranted for the position at 5K. I mean, all of the ownership on the Portland side looks pretty well justified. You know what you're getting there in their starters. Dame, CJ, Derek Jones Jr., and Covington are all playing monster minutes. So on a 5-gamer, I'm happy to pay for those minutes. Nurkic is a guy that scares me, but I'm still happy to get there. Mm-hmm. On the Minnesota side, I actually think that D'Angelo Russell, for once, is properly owned. He's 15% owned on FanDuel, 16 on DraftKings, and that's exactly where I have him. So normally I'm really excited to fade him because I don't like him at all. And today is a day where I actually might have some shares, so I'm sure he'll be terrible.
There really are. It's, you highlighted this earlier, but just looking up and down at Alex's projections and, value per $1,000 and all of that, there are just a lot of great plays in this one if you want to trust them between Dame, McCollum, Russell. You can mix him in. Obviously, Nurkic, who you just mentioned, at 5.5. X. You want to pay down. Derek Jones Jr. is a guy, $4,100 on DK, projected for north of 20 points. Kind of a mid-tier. Malik Beasley, Robert Covington's a guy that I feel like I flirt with every single day. I think about, sometimes I roster him, sometimes I don't. How do you feel about some of these mid-tier options?
I like this whole game. It's a really nice pace spot. Big total, 233 is the highest on the slate. You're just kind of hoping that Minnesota can keep it close enough. The only guy that is giving me a little bit of pause, we've got Anthony Edwards on FanDuel at 23% ownership, 4,100. I mean, I guess I get it from a price perspective, but I think that there's better value options in this game than going to Edwards, at least as of right now. I'm a little intrigued by, I think that I would rather just go to Jarrett Culver, which is kind of weird, but Jarrett Culver on FanDuel is 5% ownership. Anthony Edwards is 23. I will happily just take the ownership discount in a large field GBP, try to go a little bit different there. Culver 4,300 on DraftKings as well. I think that works for a nice value option. I mean, ultimately, it's all coming down to Juancho Hernangomez for me. He is not nearly as owned as I would have expected him to be. I appear to be significantly higher than Alex and pretty much everybody on the planet right now.
Little recency bias for you?
I don't think so. So he played 26 minutes in his first start. He played 34 and a half in his second start. I think that am I missing it? No, it wasn't overtime. For a second, I thought that I had an overtime in there and I needed to cut him by like 4 minutes, and then it all would have made sense. It's not as if I'm projecting him outside his normal rate. So he's been a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy for basically his entire career. That's exactly where I have him in this spot. This is simply just a playing time thing. And if he's going to be starting, and it appears that at least 26 minutes is the floor, but could be more, I'm cool with getting more Juancho Hernangomez. I assume they want to play him. They traded for him last year. They brought him back in the offseason. He was a restricted free agent. Like, he didn't have to come back to Minnesota, but he did. I expect them to keep playing him. And if he's playing 28, 29, 30 or more minutes, he's a great value at 4,200. There's not that many options. This isn't a 10-game slate. This is 5 games, and this is potentially a starter at 4,200 on FanDuel and 4,400 on DraftKings. I can't pass up those prices. I can't pass up the ownership. He's 9% owned on DraftKings. That just doesn't make sense to me right now, especially coming off of a banger.
Why don't we, obviously, anyone has any questions, get them in, be it on the Awesemo Premium Slack channel or obviously on YouTube. We're here with you for about another, 5-10 minutes, whatever it is. We'll, we won't blabber on and just keep you hanging around. We've reviewed the 5 games. If anyone has joined us late, just to kind of recap a couple of things, if we're looking tier by tier, or you could even look at individual positions if you want, whatever you're more comfortable with. But, upper tier guys, I guess I'm thinking like, 9K and above. Who are the ones that are the, for lack of a better term, auto plays for you? Is there anyone that you're absolutely feeling compelled to lock in? No compelling nature for me to lock anyone in. If I'm ranking my favorite plays on DraftKings north of 9K, Damian Lillard would be first. Joel Embiid would be second. LeBron James would be third, barring him playing. And I think that's probably good in terms of ranking all of those guys. They're all relatively similar, but I think that Lillard and Embiid are on an island. After that, you can kind of randomize Jokic, Doncic, LeBron, AD, and Kyrie, and I'd be happy with whatever came out of it. But Lillard and Embiid are my clear 1-2, at least on DK. It's probably the same on FanDuel. So everything north of 10K on FanDuel. Actually, that it ends up being Anthony Davis as my top play, and then Dame as well. But he's 9,200, so I don't know. There's a lot more guys at 9K and above, including CJ McCollum, which is bonkers. So next level down, other than obviously Andre Drummond, who is probably your top play on the slate tonight, barring AD not playing and Kyle Kuzma night coming at you, fast and furious. Who do you like best?
So it's very clearly Drummond at the $8,400 mark. Next highest guys, it's honestly probably Jamal Murray, given the ownership. All these other guys in like the mid to high 7s and 8s are all basically 10 or more % owned, and Jamal Murray's coming in at 4. If that number holds, I think Murray looks similar to like CJ McCollum's 8,500, Jamal Murray is 7,600. One of those guys is owned at 17%. Jamal Murray's at 4. I'm just getting to Jamal Murray in that scenario. I don't think that they're all that different in their likelihood of being in the optimal lineup.
We going back to the top tier guys, from Fresno here in the chat. You wouldn't be familiar with this, but we like to play a little game here on YouTube. Some of the other things that I do outside of Awesemo and outside of this program. It's called Buy Stream Trash, Josh. And normally we do this with movies, but what we've come to learn is you can do this with really any and all walks of life. The way this works, at least when it comes to movies, is, I'm not going to do this now, but what I would do in this environment normally is I would pick 3 at random off the wall. You own one, you watch one once, hence the stream, and the other one just goes in the trash like it was never made before. But again, you can take this into any and all things that you want to think about. And From Fresno is taking it right back to top guys. Says, buy stream trash for you, my friend. Those top guys of Irving, Joker, Luka. So one that you have to play, one that you'd consider playing, and the one that is an absolute fade for you, I guess, in this situation.
Okay, so it's important to note whether it's a cash game or a GPP. So I'm going to assume that we're talking about just like best plays independently. Yeah. So I'm going to say that I would actually, oh God, I cannot believe I'm going to say this. So I would, what's the one where I own him?
Buy.
I would buy Kyrie Irving.
Okay.
I would stream Nikola Jokic.
Okay.
And trash Luka.
Yikes. Yeah. The disrespect. Yeah. Brendan says a better name for the game would be punt, lock, fade. Well, sure, if we're specifically talking about, DFS, but again, it started as a movie game. But it fits. Yeah, we get the idea for sure. Lock, punt, fade. So fading Luka of that group.
That doesn't make me feel good at all, but
it's not going to help you sleep at night, but
no, sure. Not at all. I don't ever want to fade Luka. I certainly don't ever want to buy Kyrie Irving, so that's how you know it's a real response.
Patrick says that you're his boy, and he paid for his super chat.
Yeah, I wish he would have kept that $2 and stuck it somewhere unfortunate for him, particularly a dirty two dirty bills that would cause problems. Congratulations on never coming back here, Patrick.
Let's see. Brandon says you can easily play Jokic, Luka, and Kyrie. You think?
Jokic, Luka, and Kyrie?
I mean, are you going to have like 3.5K guys the rest of your lineup? What's the math check out on that?
You cannot easily play those 3 guys.
You can easily do it if you don't care what the rest of your lineup looks like.
On DraftKings, the rest of the lineup ends up being Bruce Brown, Prince, Kleber, Willie Cauley-Stein, and Hernan Gomez. I assume that that's 260 fantasy points. If I don't lock anybody, my optimal is 273 too. I don't need to give up 13.2 points off my optimal for that one.
Man. Okay. So let's see. So we were talking about, obviously, the next tier down. You talked about Drummond and some of those guys that you really like. How about, as we've have a few minutes left, you start to get into the guys that are, I don't know, sub 5K, sub 4K, real value options, because obviously if you're going to pay up, if Drummond is your most expensive play, you don't really have to worry about these guys for the most part. You can find your value in the 6s and 7s. But if you're going to pay up for a stud, you're going to need one of those guys or 2 of those guys that are in that real low range. Who do you like best?
Yeah. So if we're just talking like general value sub 5K, Hernan Gomez is at the top of my heap, at least as of right now. I'm going to dig into it more to find out if there's a reason that I shouldn't expect 28 or more minutes. I think Isaac Okoro, as long as he's playing today, should be a guy that I'm at least a little bit interested in. Dual eligibility on DraftKings, small forward, power forward, only 4K. The minutes should be there. I just don't know if they're doing anything with him coming off of the injury. Willie Cauley-Stein, if he is starting, should be a decent value option. Jarrett Culver, Kuzma doesn't fit the cutoff, so we're getting into like really weird stuff. Gary Trent, Ricky Rubio. These are just guys that are like, to me, going a bit under owned given their price tags. I mean, Derek Jones Jr. is a good value option, but he's already just picking up that ownership. So it's one that most people are probably already on. So if we're looking just in terms of like guys that it doesn't really matter what their own, just raw good plays, Derek Jones Jr., Culver, Wancho, Bruce Brown at 3,500. I think we pretty much hit on everybody that's like a mildly decent value play.
Brendan says, Josh, what do you think your ownership on AD on FanDuel will be today? I know it's early still, but just curious how it's looking right now.
It's going to be pretty big if I had to guess. And it's obviously, this is assuming that I have to move forward thinking that he is playing. Barring any changes to my Hernan Gomez projections, AD will either be first or second at power forward in ownership, and I will absolutely be north of the field if the field is 22%. The position just works out really well. I think a lot of these guys are going a bit overowned. And if it means like I have a little bit less Robert Covington or Brandon Clark or Naz Reid, and it just means that I roster more shares of Anthony Davis at power forward, yeah, that one works for me.
El Negro Loco says, though, Josh, don't plan on AD playing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to plan on AD playing, but I don't have a choice right now. Otherwise, my lineups are going to be broken with infinite Markieff Morris.
What is your approach to that, I guess, because obviously you're talking about a later game and lineups locking at 7:30 Eastern time, that game coming at you 2.5 hours later. If we don't have definitive word on LeBron versus AD and whether they're playing or whether they're not, do you just stay away from guys like that so you don't screw up the whole rest of your build? Or are you taking kind of a leap of faith based on reports that are out there at the time?
No, so today's a really interesting day for it. I don't care all that much heading into lock. I'm happy to just make my lineups and just worry about the news as it comes, because there are 3 games at 10 o'clock. So 7:30 is going to come. We're going to be locked. The next game is going to lock at 8. And then we don't have anything for 2 hours. And then I have 60% of the slate to do my late swap. So if this were a situation where this Lakers game was at 10:30 or it was just simply on an island, Dallas and Minnesota were significantly earlier, I would try to plan a little bit more, try to make sure that I would try to put my plan in place for what I need to do if LeBron is out, if AD is out, where my swaps would naturally be. But on a slate like this, where there's 2 other games plus that game at 10 o'clock, I just assume Fantasy Cruncher Late Swaptimizer will carry out everything that I needed to do if I need to make any changes. There are enough options that you'll be fine.
With north of 800 watching and pushing for 200 likes, make sure you do it on your way out the door because we are just about done. Smash that like button, hit the subscribe button so you can keep up with all of Awesemo's shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and so much more. And once you subscribe, you can hit that notification button to get alerts when all of our shows go live. We do greatly appreciate it. So at what time can we expect to see some of your videos starting to pop up on YouTube with a reiteration of what we've been talking about, your top 10 plays today?
Those videos have been up for 1 hour and 15 minutes now. They got posted at 9:45. Yeah. Oh, they're out. They were out even earlier than that, honestly. It took me a little bit. I had to take the dog to doggy daycare today. Otherwise, they would have been out at 9 o'clock. But either way, they were out before the show started. Go check them out. There haven't been any changes yet. Top 10 plays on FanDuel, top 10 plays on DraftKings. And then I'm back live before lock tonight, 6:30. Myself, Nerd-Ass Greg, breaking it all down for an hour.
Yeah, here's the full slate for Awesemo videos over the course of the rest of the day. At 11 o'clock, which is moments from now, NFL Strategy Show, Laffy and Matt. At 1 o'clock, you've got the PGA Live Before Lock, Jason, Ben, and Alex. 5:30, NBA Deeper Dive, Laffy and Adam. And then, as Josh mentioned, he will return with a guy that we like to call Tinder Lake. It's Greg Ehrenberg, NBA Live Before Lock at 6:30, taking you right up, obviously, for that hour until the start of all this madness. And a whole lot can change between now and then. We know that. We know how all this works. But in the meantime, we're going to get ready to send it off to the other guys. Thanks so much for being with us here. Obviously, thanks to Jordan, getting it all done behind the scenes. Thanks to all of you for being along with us on YouTube and wherever you are following along. We appreciate it. And Josh, always a pleasure, buddy.
You too. Good show. It was fun. First one together, I think, at least for the NBA. We didn't do any NFL stuff, right?
No, which means, many more on the way. Hopefully we continue to like it just as much. See you.
Can't wait. Later on, guys.